Hello everyone and welcome to another IT Heroes video. In today's video we're going to go over the process of enabling the Active Directory recycling bin as well as demonstrating the functionality that the Active Directory recycling bin brings to an environment. For those that are not familiar with the concept of the Active Directory recycling bin, it's very similar to the recycling bin that is built into Windows operating systems and has been for quite some time. Mac OS has their own version of at least they used to call it the trash. I don't know about the modern versions. I'm not a Mac person at all, and I think other operating systems have similar concepts to the recycling bin as well, but overall the recycling bin is pretty well known and understood to most people. So basically a recycling bin for Active Directory works in a very similar way as just our standard recycling bin works for files. So for example, my file here, this little text file that has data in it, of course, if I go through and delete this file here, it's actually not going to delete the file from the system. It's simply going to mark it as deleted and store it in the recycling bin, which we can open up and see here. And in the event that we needed to go through and actually bring this file back and undelete it, we can simply select the file and choose Restore, and it puts it back in its original location with all of its original content. This is, of course, just doing this for files, but the Active Directory recycling bin works under the same premise and really has the same type of functionality to it. So we're going to go through now and enable the Active Directory recycling bin for this environment here. And we're also going to go through and test the actual functionality and process for the Active recycling bin to basically make sure that it works and does what we expect it to do. So there are a few ways of enabling the Active Directory recycling bin. Back in the Server 2008 days when the Active Directory recycling bin was first introduced, it was actually required that you had to use PowerShell to go through and enable it in an environment, and it was kind of a tricky process to enable it, and to be able to actually do anything with it, you also had to use PowerShell to bring those objects back. Microsoft did make an improvement on this beginning with Server 2012, where they added a graphical user interface to go through and enable the Active Directory recycling bin, which is what we're going to use here today. But just know that this process, like almost every other process nowadays, can be done through PowerShell as well. So what we're going to do to be able to turn this on in our environment is we're just going to go to the Start menu here, and we are going to open up the Active Directory Administrative Center, which is this right here. Now, overall, personally, I'm not a big fan of the Active Directory Administrative Center. I don't think that it has too many specific purposes that are really all that useful that couldn't be handled better using Active Directory users and computers or other different areas. But in this particular instance, the Active Directory Administrative Center is by far the easiest way for us to go through and enable the Active Directory recycling bin here. So that's the process we're going to demonstrate here. So, with our Active Directory Active Directory Administrative Center open now, what we're going to do is we're going to select our domain over on the left side here, which is our IT Heroes domain. And then right over on the toolbar on the right side, we have an easy option right here of Enable Recycle Bin. Now, big thing to keep in mind, Active Directory recycling bin is not enabled by default. So this process is something you should absolutely consider going through and doing every time you're creating a new domain, especially for production environments, as the usefulness of the Active Directory recycling bin really cannot be understated, and we'll go into all that here shortly. But to go through and actually enable this, we're going to simply open up the Administrative Center, which we've already done here now, and click this option over on the right, Enable Recycle Bin. So of course it is going to ask for a confirmation here, and we're going to go ahead and say yes or say OK on that. And with that, we are actually done in enabling the Active Directory recycling bin. It's really that simple. Now, a major consideration to keep in mind is this environment is a small test environment with a single domain controller. If you do have an environment that has multiple domain controllers, after you enable the recycling bin, you will need to allow for replication of Active Directory to occur for it to truly be enabled in your environment. Effectively, each of your domain controllers needs to get the message, hey, we're turning on the Active Directory recycling bin. So before attempting to delete any objects or use the recycling bin, do ensure that you've given enough time for your domain controllers to replicate the setting so that it can actually be fully functional in the environment. But once we've actually gone through and enabled the recycling bin here, we really don't need to do anything else at all in the Active Directory Administrative Center. What we simply need to do now is test it. So I'm going to leave that open because we will need to use that later to bring objects back that we've deleted. But we're going to go through right now and start testing some of the functionality of this. So I have my little Windows 10 workstation virtual machine here, and we're going to go ahead and get logged on to our domain with our Bruce Wayne account. So basically just demonstrating here that this machine is connected to the domain and our Bruce Wayne user is able to log on to the domain. We're doing this right now because this functionality is going to change in just a moment when we begin going through and deleting some of the objects for this. So, as we see here, Windows loads up, logs in, not any problems or anything going on here. So we will go ahead and log. Oops, not meaning to switch the user here, but I'm logging Bruce Wayne out of the account. This is effectively the same thing here, logging it up, bringing it to the login screen. And we're going to go back over to our domain controller and open up Active Directory users and computers. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to our IT staff OU where we see our Bruce Wayne account. And I'm going to go ahead and take a quick look at the properties of this so you can just see a couple things. Now, we don't have a lot of information on here about Bruce Wayne. Most people don't have a lot of information about Bruce Wayne, but we're going to go through and make sure that all the properties of this do come back when we delete the object and recover this from the Active Directory recycling bin. So one of the most notable things about this is it is a member of the IT staff group. So after we go through and delete this account and restore it, what we should see is it is still a member of the IT staff group if that restore is really bringing back all of the functions and the settings that this user had. So we'll go ahead and close the property window on the user now, and we're going to go ahead and delete Bruce Wayne's account from Active Directory now. So are you sure you want to delete? Yes, and there we go. So now if I go back over to our machine here and attempt to log in, yep, I thought it might allow that session to stay alive here. Let's sign out now. And now we're going to go ahead and attempt to sign in and start a new session as Bruce Wayne. Password is incorrect. Try that one more time just to make sure. Password is incorrect. This is what we would expect to see because Bruce Wayne's account has been deleted from Active Directory, meaning he can no longer authenticate. And of course, for security reasons, we get just a generic password is incorrect message. That way, anyone attempting to use an account, attempting to log on to a domain with incorrect credentials, they don't know if they're using a valid account or not. This is expected behavior here. So Bruce Wayne no longer has an account in our environment, can no longer log on to the domain. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is jump back over to our Active Directory Administrative Center. And we're going to take a look now. We're going to actually expand this out, and we're going to go over to the Deleted Objects section here now. And when we go to the Deleted Objects section here in the Active Directory Administrative Center, we see our Bruce Wayne account. We see when it was deleted, the last known information about the parent here of where it was actually located in Active Directory. This is its former OU. So now this is moved over to the Deleted Objects, which is a hidden structure within Active Directory that isn't visible by default through Active Directory users and computers and isn't visible to most people that would be looking at Active Directory. So we've decided that Bruce Wayne's account was deleted on accident. Someone at the help desk chose the wrong account, and turns out we've removed Bruce Wayne, but he still actually works for IT Hero, so we need to bring him back. So we have a couple of options when we right-click on the account. So our restore is what we're going to be using here today, but we also have the option to restore to and choose a different location. We can locate the Active Directory OU where this came from before, but of course we have Active Directory users and computers already open to that, so that's not going to be too helpful for us at the moment. We can also look at the properties for the user, and we can see just some really general information about the account here. Not a whole lot that's really terribly useful for us. Really the main functionality of going through and doing this just comes from simply going to the deleted objects and then choosing the restore option here. And when we do that, Bruce Wayne's account is gone from our deleted objects area. And if we go back over to Active Directory users and computers, if I navigate away from that OU and then back to cause it to refresh, give us the option to refresh here, we have our Bruce Wayne user account back in Active Directory. Now we're going to go take a look at the properties again, because we do again want to make sure that it's still a member of our IT staff group. And there it is. So this is what we were hoping to see. This is demonstrating that hopefully the Active Directory recycling bin is restored this account and it's fully functional again. Of course, the best way to test is let's go ahead and try to log on to our machine, our domain machine again. So far so good here, not being prompted with a incorrect password, and this should allow us to log in, and Bruce Wayne is back to functioning as he was before, as if his account was never deleted and nothing ever happened, nothing ever changed. Now, let's say, for example, this user had items on their desktop or items saved in their documents folder or anything else. All of that is actually saved on that workstation in those directories where this user profile is saved, or if you're doing some kind of redirection, of course, wherever that location is. But the main thing about this is that going through and deleting the account in Active Directory does not, at least by default, cause any files or profiles to be deleted from workstations. So restoring the account should allow that user to simply function in the same state that they were before if it's restored successfully. So we're going to go ahead and log off of the system one more time now. We're going to go back over to our domain controller now, and we're also going to test out deleting the workstation itself. Now, very similar to that user account here, what I've gone through and done is added this to the IT computers group as a good attribute, just to verify that after we delete the computer object and restore it, that it does restore and get all the same settings and everything that it had before. So we'll go ahead and delete this workstation here now from Active Directory, which is, of course, our virtual machine here. Now, something to keep in mind when deleting some user objects, computer objects, and everything else, you can have sub-objects or subtrees to those that contain any number of different information or properties, such as certificates. You could have BitLocker recovery keys. The objects actually can be containers for other types of things. So if you do see this type of a message of, are you sure you want to delete this, not a bad idea to verify that you have a copy of any of that information that you might need that might be associated with that account, but that you need for other purposes. So in my case here, I'm not worried about any of this at all here. I'm going to go ahead and say yes on deleting the computer object. Now when we go back over to our workstation here, we're going to try to log on with Bruce Wayne's account again. And sometimes this takes a minute for it to actually really go into effect. I've seen this actually still allow a log on for the first minute or so after, even after the computer account is deleted. So this first attempt to log on may be successful here. Yep. So we'll give this I'm going to go ahead and log off one more time, and then we will try to log in again. Might even have to restart the computer for this to really fully go into effect. Yep, a little slow to recognize that this object has been deleted from Active Directory. As I said in previous videos, and I will say once again, this is a small test environment that I'm building in, just running in Hyper-V, in client-side Hyper-V on Windows 10. Not the fastest environment out there, so sometimes it does take a little while for it to actually realize changes have occurred, and in other environments that I have to replicate between domain controllers can sometimes take quite a while here, so not completely unexpected behavior, but now after a restart, when we try to go through and log on, this is what we were expecting to see. The security database on the server does not have a computer account for this workstation trust relationship. Long, fancy Microsoft term for saying, hey, this computer doesn't belong to the domain. What do you think you're doing? So Bruce Wayne, once again, cannot log on to the domain, at least using this workstation here, because this workstation has been deleted from Active Directory. So as we did with Bruce Wayne's account, what we're going to do is go back over now to our administrative center. We're still in the deleted objects area here, so what I'm just simply going to do is hit the refresh button. And there we are. We see our desktop machine here that we deleted. And the subproperties in this particular case is simply virtual machine data. If you have Hyper-V systems that are joined to Active Directory, they do save some of the Hyper-V information as part of the Active Directory computer object. And some other virtualization solutions may do similar things out there. So that's what this subtree object is as part of this, and that's why we received that warning message before. So now we're going to go ahead and restore this the same way we did with Bruce Wayne's account. I'm going to go ahead and select both of these here because we can restore all of this back over to Active Directory. And if our goal is to restore things to the previous state, we of course want to restore everything that we deleted. So we'll go ahead and say restore here. And if I go back over to Active Directory users computers, move from one OU to the other and back to the IT computers, so we get our refresh button, and there we are. We have our desktop back. And if we go check our member of tab, it is still a member of the IT computers group, as it should be. Now, once again here, we may need to go through and restart the system for it to pick up on the change and allow us to log back in again. We'll see how this behaves this time. It's a little bit random, to be honest, on this. So, but sometimes it will just allow this simply to go through. It will immediately recognize that the computer object is there again, and yep, there we are. So we've deleted this computer object completely out of Active Directory. Effectively, I shouldn't say completely because it really just gets moved to that deleted objects area. But once it's in the deleted objects, it is non-functional at that point, which is why we weren't able to actually log back onto the machine with it being deleted. Now with it being restored, all of its original properties, settings, and its SID and authentication with Active Directory are all restored, and that allows us to log back onto the machine and function as normal again. So again, the Active Directory recycling bin is a very, very important measure I feel to go through and implement in every Active Directory environment, because in the case of something going wrong, you really can't beat the functionality of simply being able to go over to the deleted objects area here and restore something that was deleted on accident, or maybe deleted on purpose but turns out was needed and people simply thought that it just wasn't needed anymore. This is very common for old user accounts, old service accounts, old computer accounts. It's good to keep Active Directory clean, but a lot of people are afraid of actually cleaning their Active Directory environment because they fear consequences of deleting things. With the Active Directory recycling bin in place, a lot of those fears can be mitigated because you do have this quick and easy option to restore anything that is deleted so that it doesn't actually cause harm to the environment and you can recover from any kind of scenario. Now, another note on that, keep in mind that Active Directory and the deleted objects does periodically go through and clear this all out. The default on that, I believe, is 30 days. If I'm incorrect on that, please post in the comments below there. But 30 days, I believe, is the default that it goes through and just clears everything out of the deleted objects area. So that would be a hard delete, a permanent delete once that occurs. And so let's say we went through and deleted Bruce Wayne's account today, and next month, 31 days from now, it turns out that we want to restore that. Well, we wouldn't be able to do that with our Active Directory recycling bin anymore at that point. We would need to resort to a backup of Active Directory to be able to restore that, which is another side note. Even though you have the Active Directory recycling bin enabled, that is not a reason to not be taking backups of your Active Directory environment and your domain controllers. Remember, in the event of a domain controller being compromised, that means basically your network is compromised. So very important to protect your domain controllers, protect your domain, and of course have backups in the event that something goes wrong so that you can recover from any number of different possible scenarios and situations out there. So I really hope that you found this video to be helpful. If you have any other topics that you'd like me to work on, or comments or questions about any of this process, please do comment below, like and subscribe, and continue being an IT hero. Have a great day, everyone.